Good morning and welcome back to Coaching Conversations. I'm Lourdes Slaber. Today we're sharing from our soon-to-be released book, The Daily Path to Resilience, Small Steps to an Unshakable You. It's a modern interpretation of ancient Stoic wisdom. One quote, one interpretation, one takeaway you could actually use today as a daily practice. And the more you return to it, the more it returns you to your center.
And I'm Maria Savio. And I want to hit you with a hard truth right out of the gate. A quote that forms the basis of today's entire philosophy. Stop obsessing over others' faults. Instead, focus on keeping your own spirit clear and kind. It is part of human nature to err. So why be angry when someone makes a mistake? So, Lourdes, why does that quote feel impossible to practice? Sometimes.
Well, this is the human condition, right? It feels impossible because our initial gut reaction is to protect ourselves, to assign blame and to get angry. But what we're talking about today is practicing compassion and forgiveness, which is peak Stoicism. The core idea is that no one intends to harm themselves or others. They act from ignorance, a mistaken belief about what is good. The Stoic said, no one errs willingly. If you realize someone made a colossal mistake because they truly didn't know better, your anger logically melts away and is replaced by empathy or compassion. It's about letting go of those irrational emotions and protecting your inner peace.
Right. And, I think we all have a person or persons that we find it really easy to forgive them immediately. Like, a favorite sibling or a friend or a favorite, nephew, niece. But in other situations, when people mess up, we think it costs time, it costs money, it costs us our peace. And many of us don't think or even consider the possibility in that moment of practicing compassion and or, forgiving them right away. It just doesn't occur to us, right? Think about the scenarios we've probably or likely all encountered. The overcritical boss who may publicly humiliate you, or the neighbor that wants to talk to you about politics and you disagree and you really don't want to engage. And also the occasion when we've been, dangerously cut off in traffic. In those moments, I'm not really feeling compassionate, right?
Yeah, or, a situation where a colleague or friend constantly one-ups you. Compassion is not the first thing that comes to mind. It's just not. Those are all great common examples of situations where we need to control our response. We have to remember that even in situations like a friend repeatedly breaking a promise to be on time, or a colleague taking credit for your work, it was my idea. Their actions stem from a flawed character or moral weakness, not a desire for our suffering. But we want to dive into one situation that truly puts this principle to the ultimate test, where the stakes are so high that true forgiveness feels almost superhuman.
Right. One example, and if you're in a relationship, that really can really test us, right? Because if your spouse makes a financial mistake, maybe it's a situation where your partner, loses a significant amount of money, of family savings, due to either carelessness or poorly researched investment, or just bad market timing. Maybe the sheer of that mistake losing stability, losing money. It makes anger seem justified.
Yeah, facing the possibility of financial ruin, perhaps months or years of added stress, it would seem reasonable to be angry. I mean, how could you not be angry, right? And that's the challenge. The Stoic response requires looking past the money, which is an external event, and focusing on the person. It becomes an opportunity to practice active forgiveness by recognizing two things. First, it wasn't malice. The spouse was likely motivated by a mistaken belief that they could grow the family's security, right? So it's a form of ignorance. And they didn't intend to inflict poverty, right? And then upholding shared humanity, bringing awareness to the fact that they are part of one big human family, and treating them, with a gentle acceptance of their human nature, their human fallibility.
Yeah, and I realize, and I think we all find it very difficult, but the goal isn't accepting, it isn't about just accepting the mistake. It's about reframing the event. It's also about dissolving the anger. And this allows you to shift your energy away from those, prolonged resentments, or those nights where you stay up and, oh, I should have said this, or I should have done that, those regrets. And maybe even, ending or not having that extra or needless drama. When you reframe, you move forward, you move towards, okay, what are the next steps, or how do we fix this? How do we rebuild?
Yeah, exactly. That consciousness, that conscious choice is to prioritize your inner peace over like the need to retaliate. And this is the highest form of Stoic compassion. When the consequences are this severe, applying the no one errs willingly framework is the ultimate test of virtue. Like I said before, superhuman.
Yeah, so applying this today when we're dealing with human error and costly mistakes at home, at work, or even by institutions, how do we use compassion and forgiveness as an active tool?
Yeah, we have to treat our relationships like a shared vessel sailing on a choppy ocean. When a mistake happens, say the spouse loses the savings or a colleague messes up a key report, it feels like someone poked a giant hole in the side of the boat. Ugh. And our instinct is to scream at that person who poked the hole.
Yeah, but screaming doesn't help bail out the water. And I think that you have to remember you're in it together. And the Stoic practice is to really recognize this and recognize that hole poker, or the person who put the hole in the ship, is driven by ignorance, or maybe they're driven by stress. And at the end of the day, they're still a crewmate. You're still in it together. Their error wasn't intentional. It was unintentional, right? You practice compassion by saying, I see your pain and stress, which led to this mistake. You practice forgiveness by immediately shifting your energy from blaming them to the problem at hand, and to bailing out that extra water.
Yes, I love that. So here's our specific advice for the modern context. When a loved one or a colleague makes a significant mistake, instead of getting angry, first acknowledge the ignorance. Recognize their failure came from a flawed belief system, chasing a quick buck, a lack of focus, poor self-control, getting caught up in the moment, not
Yeah.
a desire to sabotage you. And then drop the anger bucket. Anger is such a heavy bucket that makes your own emotional labor harder. So put it down. Forgo the irrational emotion.
Yeah. We have to learn to pick up the compassion bucket. Redirect the energy. Ask, what's the next rational thing we need to do? And focus on fixing the problem, not punishing the person. Our first reaction might, come from fear, but our goal is to have compassion override the fear and the anxiety. Remember, in any shared vessel, we're all connected by humanity. Your peace is dependent on your own actions, not theirs. So, be the one who bails the water with a steady hand and letting go of the need to judge and blame, and secure both your inner self and your shared future.
Yes. So that's your thought for the week. And don't let it stay just a quote. Let it challenge you. Let it shape you. Try it out in real life and see how it changes the way you think and the way you show up. We'll be back next week with another reading from The Daily Path to Resilience, Small Steps to an Unshakable You.